It's really important when you read the story of those Pentecostal showers of flames coming down that you understand the people to whom Luke was speaking. Luke is unique amongst the writers of the Gospels because he is a Gentile. And he is writing for Gentiles. All the other Gospels are written for Jews who are in the process of becoming Christians, or Christians who used to be Jews. So the imagery in the other Gospels is based heavily on the Old Testament. But Luke's audience are Gentiles. They are Greco-Romans. And you have to say, what are those people thinking about? And the most important thing about them is to know that they already have a religion. They don't need a new religion that Luke is offering. They have a solid old religion that goes back at least 1,000 years, and it's a pretty good religion. And you know what it is. It is the religion based around the gods who live on Mount Olympus. And up on Mount Olympus, there are 12 gods. They are the descendants of Kronos, time. And time had 5 children, 3 sons whose names were Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Zeus was the god of the sky, Poseidon was the god of the oceans, Hades was the god of the underworld, and he had 2 daughters, Hestia and Hera. Hestia is the goddess of the hearth and the home, and Hera is the goddess of women. And there's a whole complex system. Zeus had 7 children: Athena, Ares, Apollo, Artemis, Aphrodite, Hermes, Hephaestus. They are all gods of different certain things. Zeus wins the lottery over his 2 brothers and becomes the supreme being. And you know what Zeus does? He sits up on Mount Olympus and he looks down at people, and if you're doing anything wrong, Zeus throws down a fireball to get you. And these people to whom Luke is speaking know all about the fire that comes down from heaven. It's coming down all the time, perhaps in the form of sickness, poverty, disaster. Whenever something goes wrong for those people, they say, aha, Zeus has sent a fireball or a lightning bolt down on that person. So they've got a religion, a deep, old religion. But here's an interesting thing. By the 1st century, when Luke is writing, the gods on Mount Olympus are dying. And by that I mean their hold upon the people is dying. The people don't worship them quite so strongly as they used to. The people are a little more sophisticated, and they are searching for something else and something better and something deeper to satisfy them. That's Luke's audience. When he wants to talk to them, he says, how will I get their attention? I will tell about the fire from heaven, and they will all understand that. Those people, above all else, knew one thing about the fire of heaven. They knew that they could not possess it, because they knew the story of Prometheus. Prometheus, who was half God and half human, he was of that race called the Titans. And Prometheus climbed Olympus, stole a lump of burning charcoal from the hearth of Zeus, brought it back to earth wrapped in a fennel shoot, and gave it to human beings, and for that Prometheus was eternally punished. I'm sure you all know your Greek mythology. Prometheus was chained to a great rock, and an eagle or a vulture came down and cut him open and ate his liver. And that happened every day, and every night Prometheus' liver would grow back and he would heal up, and the next day the eagle or the vulture would come back down and do it again. And that was going to happen for 3 million years. So they knew, you can't have the fire. You can't possess the power of the gods. Then Luke tells the story of Pentecost. He says the people were gathered together, and the heavens opened up, and there was a sound like rushing wind, and flames came down from heaven. And the people know what that means. It means everyone is going to be destroyed. But instead of that, in our story of the fire, the flames come down and touch the people, and they are not destroyed. Instead, they are lifted up. The power, the flames go inside of them. They inherit the power of the gods, and they are given wonderful power to reach out and to change the way that the world is. Imagine how that would have sounded to the Greco-Roman people who only knew the gods as jealously guarding their power and their fire, to hear, here is a God who willingly gives his fire to the people and says, my power is now in you, and you can use it to change and heal and restore the world around you. Because we know that people went out from there with healing strength and grace and mercy and wonder, and it was absolutely incredible. So here's a new story for those people. At the same time, Luke knew that Jewish people would be reading his story as well, but the Jews, of course, have their own history with fire, and it's just about the same as the history with the Greco-Roman world. God sits up on Mount Sinai and sends lightning bolts down on people he doesn't like. We know that from the story of Elijah and the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel, when God sent the fire and it devoured the sacrifice that Elijah had prepared. And then when the son of Ahaz sends 50 soldiers to negotiate with Elijah, Elijah calls on God, and God sends fire and burns up that 50. And then they send another 50, and God sends fire and burns up that 50. And they finally send another 50, at which time Elijah says, okay, now I'll talk to you, but you pretty much know where the power is in this conversation. The fire has destructive, vengeful, hateful power for the people within the Jewish context as well. And now Luke is saying, listen, this isn't the way it is with God's power. Luke has already established this back in the 9th chapter in the 30th verse of his Gospel. When the disciples and Jesus came into a Samaritan town, the people would not receive Jesus. So what did the disciples say? Shall we call on God to send fire from heaven to destroy these people? They knew what fire was for. And Jesus rebuked them. God's fire is not for destruction, he says to them. It is for healing. So here you have the Greco-Roman audience and you have a Jewish audience. All of them have heard that God on high sends fire to destroy. And Luke says, I want you to change your relationship to God. I want you to change the way you think about God and realize that God gives his power willingly, lovingly. He gives his power and his fire to you and puts it in you so you can heal and restore and forgive and love and strengthen and give hope and peace and joy wherever you go. That's what God's fire is for.